Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Autopilot On podcast. I'm Scott. My co-host John is with us today, and we got a lot to cover on the docket today. Lots happening this week, and go ahead, John. Take us away.
Hey, what's up, guys? John here. Welcome back to episode 2. Basically, we have a ton to cover, ranging from how the economy is changing and what that means for pilots, and then also some industry news. I know last week we never got a chance to cover much, but we got a ton going on, airline specific, really pilot specific, to be honest, and how that's going to affect us on an individual level, airline level, and then also kind of as a industry level. So we're going to be talking about a couple different items. One's going to be the resignation or ousting, I guess you could say, of Ted Christie and Matt Klein over at Spirit Airlines. We're going to be talking about the Mesa and Republic merger. And then lastly, we'll dig into the Air Wisconsin kind of saga of how that came to be and then where it's going right now with them officially ending their American Airlines partnership and revenue service for them. So we got a lot to cover. Anything else to add, Scott, before we dig in?
Yeah, we'll also go over how the economic downturns really affected all of this. I don't know, economic downturn.
Totally.
The uncertainty in the markets right now because of tariffs.
It's a wild ride and it changes every single day. So if we were recorded this 2 days ago, it would have been a totally different perspective. So a lot to dig in and kind of our perspectives on where things are going. And hopefully we're right when it comes out and maybe it's completely different. So that's our caveat, I guess you could say.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's get right into it, man. I guess we'll start off with Spirit. What's going on over there with their post bankruptcy stuff? I'm pretty sure it is the fastest bankruptcy exit in U.S. airline history. It was, 3 months, which is unfriggin' believable.
Yeah.
Going into it, I thought, okay, they've been doing all this stuff that hasn't been working. And yes, there were a lot of factors that the Pratt and Whitney issues were a big one with them, but they're doing all these things that aren't working. They haven't really changed that, at least that we could see from the outside. They rush a bankruptcy to restructure debt, and then they still haven't changed anything. So
It's
what do you
weird.
think? Yeah, what do you think, man?
So I'm going to preface this by saying there's a really great podcast that has some insider connections. It's called The Air Show. They've done a couple podcasts about this where they actually get to talk to some of the analysts that go on the earnings calls. So Savi Sith is one of the people they got to talk to. And so I'm not going to try to give false information or information that is, kind of bro information, I guess you could say. I'm going to refer back to that one, to a couple episodes, and we'll link it in the show notes because I think they give a really good understanding of exactly the nuts and bolts of their finances. And those are kind of complex and above my head in terms of being able to give you an accurate representation. But the way I kind of see it is they went into bankruptcy, got rid of shareholders in that sense, where they completely wiped them out. And they're in a controlling interest by private equity or a couple of different players in that sense. They now have a completely new board of directors. So they had 6 new people on the board. And then they had, what's his name? Ted Christie. He was the only one remaining on the board.
It's been there forever.
Then a couple of days ago, he was there for 12 years as CEO and a couple of years before that as a CFO. Matt Klein has been there for a long time too, and he's the CMO, Chief Commercial Officer.
Okay.
Basically, something must have happened, or this was their plan or something to basically, I don't know the full picture, but it sure sounds like ousting them, saying something obviously is not working. We do not like your plan of going premium. And we, effective immediately, you're no longer the CEO of Spirit. The other interesting part to this is he had about $3.8 million, and Matt also had some money coming due for retention as well. That was promised to them before going through bankruptcy to basically right the ship and make sure they don't leave during stressful, difficult times of navigating that as a corporate structure. That was coming due in a couple months. I can't remember the exact date, but it was months, not years or anything like that.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of money to leave on the table. Yes, it's all corporate shenanigans, but you would think being a CEO, you would want to say goodbye or say something as a corporate email. Maybe that was sent out. I have a couple of people who work there. They never said anything of the sort.
Mm-hmm.
So I could be wrong on that, but it seems really weird. I don't know. So, man, I really hope for those guys over at Spirit. I hope you guys are doing well, but They're burning about $3 million a day, $90 million a month. They have about 850 to $900 million of uh, liquid cash or free cash flow. So, I mean, they're kind of running out of options. And like we'll kind of get to later on, the industry is kind of contracting this summer. So, if other low cost airlines are feeling it, there is no doubt that they are too. So, that's kind of how I see it. It's a lot of stuff going on, though.
So I guess we should have prefaced the show with this, but everything that we say is our opinions, not the opinions of any company. Any financial advice we discuss or talk about, we're not financial advisors. This is just our
We're
personal
line
opinion.
pilots.
That's right.
We are
We
line
know
pilots.
everything.
That is a that's why we started the podcast, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. um, I've been watching this for months, ever since the JetBlue merger fell apart and then Frontier took another stab at it and they turned Frontier down. I heard both sides of reasoning for that. Just looking at it logically from the outside, it didn't make sense. It's like, wait, Frontier's coming in and offering you a lot more than they probably should. And it's an option to combine and make one of the largest fleets out, well, one of the larger competitors now out there. They would be a competitive agency, especially as a low cost carrier. And they were like, nah, see ya. Man, it just doesn't make sense to me. One thing I did when I did a little research for this, I didn't realize that half of their fleet had been affected by the Pratt issues. I thought it was more around 25%. So that's pretty substantial. What's crazier to me is that they did not somehow get more financial compensation from Pratt and Whitney for grounding half their fleet for a major mistake on Pratt's part. So that was pretty eye opening to me. So there is a lot more outside influence in what went down than I thought. However, when things are falling apart and you're in debt and you're filing bankruptcy, the status quo isn't the answer. Come on, man,
Yeah.
make a change. So it's so weird to see how these corporations do stuff like this. They always, Boeing did the same thing with the Max when it first got shut down was they kept the CEO. He refused to step down. I said right away at the time, I said, they're never going to sign off on this airplane until they replace that CEO because ultimately everything falls on that guy's head. Well, that's exactly what happened. They
Yeah.
did not certify that airplane until that guy stepped out. So this could be something that the board was waiting to do. I don't know, or that the shareholders were demanding in the background. There's always stuff like that
Yeah.
going on that we don't see.
I
But
got
it.
one
Go
thing
ahead.
to add to that. They got hit with all these Pratt and Whitney issues, but they were still losing money on every flight almost,
Oh,
if you average it out.
okay.
So, what is to make? I mean, again, this is just kind of an idea. Would they have actually been successful if they had their full fleet, or would it just compounded the issues?
That's a darn
That's
good
something to think
question.
about. And again, we have zero data to know how they could have utilized that fleet and made a difference in different markets, whatever. But it goes to kind of show if they're burning that much money already,
Yeah.
they were getting the
How
way
much
they're
did
financing.
how
Go
much did
ahead.
their new training facility and headquarters they built in Fort Lauderdale cost them? It was like 300
That's a
million or
great
something.
question.
it was it
Yes.
was substantial.
Yeah, let me see. How much did new
Yeah.
Spirit
Right
HQ
right before this
cost?
all went down, they finished building this brand new huge building. I think it had Sims and everything in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Has
I
a
mean,
training hotel in it too,
yeah.
like American Airlines. Like you literally can stay there as a pilot
Yeah,
and
yeah,
not have
yeah.
to go to like the Hilton Inn or whatever.
Yeah, I know a bunch of guys at
It's
American.
250 million.
250 million. I was
250
close. Yeah.
million. Yep.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous.
Oh yeah, I've seen
Yeah.
pictures. And the hotel idea is great. I have a bunch of buddies that recently went to American, and they're like, it is so nice to just not have to take a shuttle, get
Yeah.
up, walk. There's a commissary and everything. It sounds really awesome. Yeah, man.
So who knows? I don't know,
Yeah,
man. I think with Spirit, the thing that's gonna be difficult going forward is this is the prime time, like these next 3 months, and if they're not making money with all these things happening, I don't see how the investors want to put in an additional round of funding to continue on this kind of, I don't know, money pit. They
yeah,
haven't
it
made
makes no
money in five
sense.
or half a decade. So what's to make them seem like they're going to make money in a difficult economy? Like that ship has kind of sailed. So I don't
100%.
know. This is again line pilot John talking, but I don't know.
Yeah, I don't see how they're going to turn this around. They've been doing the same thing over and over again. They have not fixed the issues that have plagued them, especially publicly. You know, the
So what do you think those issues are? Let's like talk about that for a second. Like, what
yeah,
is so wrong with Spirit that they cannot turn a profit or even get close right now?
I'm not as educated about this as you are, but you know, from a line pilot's perspective, you know, we see the day-to-day operations, and the bigger things we see that are problematic at the ULCCs is the customer service issues because their business models are outsource everything, right? Pilots, flight
Yeah,
attendants are in-house. You know, management's in-house. You know, their HR, their corporate staff is usually in-house. But beyond that, underwing and overwing, they outsource everything. Now, across the industry, it seems outsourcing underwing's pretty standard. Your baggage handlers, fueling,
right.
all that stuff, right? But there's only a couple airlines in the industry that outsource their customer service agents and gate agents, and those airlines have pretty bad reputations for their customer service. It's non-existent essentially. And it's so, you know, you have somebody who is a contractor essentially, who doesn't have the authority to make changes to make the customers happy, your passengers happy, right?
Right.
And Spirit's been struggling with that for years. I mean, they probably have more TikToks and you know, reels and things about how unhappy their customers are with the airline. You know, I mean, man, I jump seat on the airplanes once in a while, and the seats aren't that bad. You know, the cabin's actually pretty
Right.
for being a ULCC. Cabin's pretty comfortable. Their flight attendants are pretty nice. Pilots are cool. Their airplanes aren't bad. Dealing with the gate agents and customer service that are very problematic for them, which just compounds over time. And they've developed a terrible reputation in that side of the industry, and they appear not to care to want to change it. Um, you know, image is everything, man. That's why Delta is always the pinnacle. You know, I when I lived in the Northwest, Alaska was that for me. Their customer service has always been off the charts. I wish I could jump seat on them all the time, just because every time I flew on them, whether it was paying or jump seating, man, they treat you like a king. You know, like
Yep.
they really do. They value you, because they understand the fact that you are without you, they don't have anything. Uh,
Totally, man.
yeah. I think that's the biggest factor. I'm sure there's a lot of other poor decision making. I really think this quarter to quarter model that these ULCCs have been using of trying to gauge earnings and things, not looking at the long term picture, is hurting them more than anything. It's just one of those very corporate things they do, and I really
Right.
think that they're they're always thinking tactically and never strategically. You know, it's next
That's
moment
a
to
really good way to put it.
yeah, it's quarter to quarter. How can I show the best quarterly earnings so that we can get you know, that the management team can get the best bonuses and make it look really good to the shareholders in the short term? Well, quarter to quarter only goes so far. You have to make background changes that long term are going to affect the next 5, 10 quarters. I don't see them doing that. I think, and you know, that's from me as dumb line pilot. I'm not very educated on this stuff. That's my outside perspective on it. I could be way off base. I don't know, man.
Yeah, I actually think you're pretty spot on. A couple of things to add is, Spirit was pretty dang successful up until what was it, like 2019 is when they started kind of lowering and not being able to hit their earnings target.
Hmm.
And I think it kind of directly contributes with when the legacies were able to figure out uh, credit card revenue, like
Oh.
dramatically increase that and offset that with really low ticket sales in the basic economy when they started that.
Hmm.
And I think once people had an option to not have to be belittled by a ULCC in that sense, they're like, yeah, I'm going to take that. Why wouldn't I? I get the flexibility of the route network. And then also I get good customer service. And then also I get reliability, which is huge for people going to Disney World for, I don't know, an $8,000 vacation for a family of four.
Yeah.
And then to have your ticket cancel and then they don't have any other agreements with anyone else. Those things, I mean, these are just a couple examples.
Yeah.
But then going into COVID, they never could. Um, Obviously, everyone had an issue there. But another thing, too, that, and this is where I don't want to go and speak like it's 100% reality. I'm pretty sure Spirit took outside money of some sort when everyone else took the CARES money. And
Oh.
that was way more beneficial for everyone else when they had an immense amount of debt with a higher interest rate later on that came due basically for them.
Hmm.
And that put them into a pinch as well with this short term debt that they took on during COVID when everyone else did not.
Hmm.
I will link to that in the show notes because I think that's an important part to this too. But then the last point I want to make is I think the ULCCs basically tried to squeeze everything they could off a model from 2014 that was successful. And they were, like you said, they were thinking tactically, not, or yeah, strategically in that sense of what is the vision that we can implement 5 years from now. And I think they were just caught on their back foot and they didn't implement things fast enough. And it takes a long time to change the direction of the ship and to completely revamp your corporate structure, saying we're not ULCC anymore, we're going after premium traffic. After you do that to everyone and all of your clientele, and you make a name for yourself off of the Jimmy Fallon show, everyone knows Spirit in that sense
Yep.
as the joke, the butt of the end of the joke, and it's really hard to recover from that. Like, how do you change that and then be like, psych, we're actually going to be the next Delta and boutique airline? I just don't see how you can do that. And then how do you do that under like a year time crunch to turn everything around when you don't have the cash to go out and implement these things that we're talking about and try to make yourself like that? A lot of people will say, oh, they never really changed anything in terms of contracts. Most airlines will reduce the, pile contract, whatever, but they're already one of the lowest paid people in the industry. So where are you going to go from that when you go sit in front of a judge and say, we need to gut this contract? When the judge is going to be like, well, they already paid less than almost half than that average guy at Delta or American or United. So where do you go from that? You
Yeah.
can't really go that far down. So I don't even think they tried to do it because
Hmm.
I don't think they were going to get much out of it. But that's, again, I'm saying this as my hunch, not my financial advisor
Yeah.
opinion, I guess you could
Right.
say.
Right.
So we'll see what happens, though. I think we'll get into it later, but Frontier, put out this 8K today or yesterday saying that they're expecting their lower earnings of -5% profit
Yeah.
margin.
And
So
Delta did something similar this week too. Yeah, we'll transition to that, in just a few minutes here, but
yeah,
yeah, it'll be real interesting to see where they go. It's been quite the ride watching them make their moves over the past few years, so something's going to have to
what would you do
happen.
as their CEO?
Say again.
Like, what this new person, if there's a new guy put in, because again, it's just the three people put on from the board that is acting as a quasi CEO,
Hmm.
what would you do? Like, I know line pile, but like, what are the changes that you would do? Let's say that you had a year and a half or 2 years to execute on this,
Okay.
regardless of everything else. I know
Sure.
that's not like a realistic
Yeah, that's better than a few
hypothetical, but
months.
like, let's just have fun with it. Yeah.
Yeah, man, one thing, I mean, and this is just because I have the line pilot experience. Customer service, number one. I believe in the Richard Branson model. I don't worry about my shareholders. I don't worry about my customers. I worry about my employees. Because if I take care of them,
Yeah.
they'll take care of the customers, who will in turn make my shareholders very happy. And that is the way I would run a business. I'm sure a lot of people would disagree with me on that, but at least trying to fix the image of the airline, from the airline that always gets put on blast because their customers or their passengers are fighting in the terminal, or someone's getting thrown off an airplane yelling, flight attendants are having to get into arguments with people. Like, that's all from Spirit. Like, I don't look at Spirit and
Right.
see all the pretty videos like you do for Delta, United, American, and that goes for most of the ULCCs, right? If it was me, I would start with customer service, and then I would get that ball rolling, because if they don't fix that, it's irrelevant long term. But number two, I would take the hard look at why are we losing so much money? What's the reality? Where do we need to cut the cost, right? Um, or where do we need to fix? It's kind of like how the government's been running, which is getting highlighted right now. Is running at this massive deficit, and no attempts until the last few months to change course on that. Same problem across the board we're seeing. So it's like, well, where is the waste coming from? Where
Yeah.
is there some kind of embezzlement going on somewhere? That would be pretty crazy. But what have we been doing that's not working? I mean, anybody who wants to fix a business, that's step one, right? Like, why is it not working? A lot of these, you see a lot of these big corporations, and they don't do that. It's freaking mind blowing. They're like, no, 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 we'll just keep doing what we do. It'll work out eventually. Anyways,
Right.
if it was me, it'd be customer service and asking why it's not working. What would you do?
I think you're right about the customer service always. The hard part is I know I asked you if you had 2 years or a year. How do you improve customer service with contract employees or bring that in house when you literally can't pay? You couldn't pay to do that actually. Um, and
Well,
that's one thing that
yeah,
I look at it. I'm like, well, why didn't you try to go through to your investors? And again, I don't know. Maybe this isn't a reality, but say, hey, we need to fix this. We need to bring everyone in house, and we need to, hire the best of the best of what we have right now, and go seek new talent because this ain't working, and we need to fix this aspect and run with it. Um, and not, I don't even care about the premium aspect. Yeah, I get the RASM and the CASM, all of those different metrics. But I think corporations get so hung up in corporate talk of, give me more color to these situations. Like, stop.
yeah.
Just treat people nicely, dude,
It,
and run an on time airline.
so
And
a couple,
like,
man.
if you can do that, go ahead.
No, a couple things there. Like treat people nicely. This comes back to the catch 22 of, well, when you're contracting to the lowest bidder for customer service agents, that means those customer service agents are making basically minimum wage. So they have no skin in the game. They don't care about the airline because they don't work for the airline. They work for some third party operation, right? And then they're getting, yelled at and beat down every day by these pissed off customers and they're pissed off because the airline has poor customer service to start with. So it's this like self-perpetuating thing. And so your turnover rate with these customer service agents is astronomical. Then you don't have time to train them to be half decent at customer service and how to even do their job. Most of them are just like trying to figure it out on the job. So then that's creating more frustration amongst everybody, which causes these people to be the contract employees to feel even worse. And what most people don't realize when you contract is, yeah, they make these people wear, the uniform or the polo or whatever with the airline name on it. They don't work for the airline though. And so,
Yeah.
yeah,
But how's the public supposed to know that?
well,
They
that's the
don't know. They
problem.
just
They
say
don't.
Spirit Airlines
Right.
or Frontier or
Exactly.
Allegiant, whoever.
Yes,
They don't know they don't
exactly.
work for them.
Exactly. So, and it's a catch 22 self-perpetuating problem. The way I look at it, right? Like, until you
Right.
put the money into fix. See, the problem is they should have put the money in to fix this years ago, but because they didn't, they don't have the money now to put into it. So
Right.
if they were somehow were to sweet talk the investors into giving them more money, that should be priority one. Fix your problems on the ground. No, and the bigger issue you see with
Right.
these is, the CEO or whoever will come out once in a while to inspect the operation. Well, everybody knows that guy's coming, right? So of course
Yeah.
everything's going to look perfect when this person shows up, right? All the airplanes are going to be
Totally.
they're going to make sure all the airplanes are on time, everything's overstaffed that day. Meanwhile, what they don't know is 2 hours ago you had 6 airplanes waiting for gates because they don't have customer service agents or they don't have even ramp staff because they moved everybody's show time to be there for the CEO to show up. So it's like, really?
Yep.
Like, they're not, they put them in these little bubbles. And this is not just at airlines, this is at every company, right? Every company did something like this. They do stuff like this. The boss shows up, everything's perfect and running great because everybody wants to keep their jobs. It's like, well, it's a fallacy, right? Because the boss can't make changes if he doesn't see that something's wrong. And if nobody has the guts to tell the boss, hey, something's wrong, well, nothing's going to change. So man,
It sounds
it's
like they need to do Undercover Boss.
didn't Ted Christie do that? Wasn't he on
No,
an
it was
episode?
the guy at Republic Airlines, their
Oh,
CEO, that we'll talk about in a minute. He did it
uh,
at Frontier back like 15 years ago or 10 years
oh, that
ago.
was when Republic owed Frontier.
Yeah.
Oh
Ted should have
man,
done that, dude.
I
He
told
should have done
her.
some Undercover Boss.
I don't even know what the guy looks like. He probably could have got away with it.
Just grow a mustache and put on some Ray-Bans or something like that.
Oh my goodness,
That's
that's
funny.
hilarious, man. Oh,
Can I ask you one more thing about this? So if if this is so difficult to do, how has Southwest done it correctly? Because their employees, they talk about all these different cultural things happening within Southwest that make it a family kind of atmosphere. Um, I wonder how much money that costs to create that. They are paid in terms of, if we can remember to link this in the show notes too. There was a study that came out recently that showed how much money an average employee makes in management at all the different airlines. And that's averaging based upon their size and all that, revenue made and all. And Southwest on the top, and then Frontier was on the bottom. I'm sure Spirit was there too,
Oh,
and
interesting.
Southwest was almost getting paid double what the Frontier employee was, the corporate employee. And
Interesting.
so what I wonder is like, what's the correlation to like treating people better and incentivizing them to do better versus the other side of the paradigm is cost is king and we will always just be the cheapest. And that's going to be how we're going to win. Going back to what I originally said, like why do you think Southwest is so successful on that? I know it's changing now, but like
It
it
is.
was so successful in
I
that.
can tell you why it was
So
so successful. Everybody, you talk to any
yeah,
Southwest employee that worked there when Herb Keller ran the show, that's why. So Herb Keller had his finger on the day-to-day pulse of operations, right? I've heard a rumor and I've heard several pilots agree to this from Southwest, but it's to my understanding, Herb Keller tried to jump seat on a Southwest flight every single day. I don't know if that was true or not, but I'm sure he did it quite a bit. And this is back,
yeah,
good old Herb, man. Herb was he was a boss. He apparently he would go jump seat. He would sit up in the cockpit. As soon as they were wheels up, he'd light up a cigarette because he could do that back then, and it was his airline, so he would do it anyways. And then he would look at the guys and go, "So what's going on? Tell me what's wrong. Tell me what's
yeah,
working right." And the guys were they knew that they could openly tell him those things without fear of repercussion or judgment. And
yeah,
so they would tell him, "Hey man, this is what's working great. We had this issue happen yesterday. It's happened several times now." Whatever the case was, apparently, then Herb would go back to the office that day, call in all the managers that had to do with it, and say, "Hey guys, we have a problem. We need to fix it. Figure out how to fix it right now." And so he
yeah,
had a real perspective of what was happening day to day at his airline. He wasn't hiding in his castle, not seeing the realities. He was on the front line every day. And because of that, there was trust amongst the pilot group, amongst all the employees, really. He knew it was wrong and he fixed it. He listened to it and he fixed it from a frontline perspective, not from an overseeing corporate management perspective. He didn't run his airline like that. Another thing was there's just a lot of good examples. I heard some really good examples from pilots and flight attendants because I commute quite a bit on Southwest. And I've heard a lot of amazing examples how they had personal interactions with Herb that positively impacted their lives, whether they had like a death in the family and Herb happened to hear about it and he
sure.
he went out of his way to personally look after that family, whatever the case was. And those are the kinds of things that build a culture of trust and support of your management team. So because of those things, what Herb did was he realized if I get my team on board and they know I've got their backs, they're going to go above and beyond 24/7 from our customers because they want to push the image that I want to push. And he gave them skin in the game and they did. And that's why when you flew Southwest, I mean, even today, there's still some of it left over. You're starting to see the frustration with the Elliott merger and the
Yeah.
management corporate changes they've made along the way. But the culture's still there. It's just starting to die off, unfortunately, because of the changes they've made. I think that's why Southwest has been so successful. I think that's why they have, to answer your question as to why their management team makes more money, probably because they generate more money. You can cut costs all you want,
But
which
even
is,
compared to Delta, that's the interesting thing is when you compare it to someone like Delta, they're getting paid more for their job than say Delta employee doing the same job in network planning or revenue management
oh,
on
interesting.
average.
Okay. I thought you were
Yeah.
talking about just
So
C-suite executives. Um,
no, just
no. So there's,
company corporate general. So
okay.
I thought that was interesting.
Interesting. It could go back to the concept of take care of your people over,
That's what I was thinking.
yeah, because I mean, you talk to guys. I mean, again, this is just my observation from talking to people. This isn't factual, or well, could be. I don't have any like hard data to back it up. But when I talk to a Southwest guy, you could tell they're more bought into the company. They
Yeah.
really love working for that company and they love working there. Whereas you talk to the Delta guys and they're like, yeah, we're just a number. And they're okay
Yeah.
with that, right? Whereas Southwest people feel like they're more part of the family. Delta guys don't feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, and I guess, they call it the people department. They do things differently compared to everyone else in terms of corporate structure and all those things. So I think that's interesting. Another way I think Delta probably incentivizes their people is their profit sharing checks.
yeah.
$1.4 billion they gave this year.
Oh, yeah, it's
So
substantial.
when you give your employees $1.4 billion, I think you're going to probably get incentivized to treat your customers with respect. Not saying you won it before.
Right.
$100,000 check in the mail on Valentine's Day sure makes you pretty respectful to people.
Well, and that's the thing. So
Yeah,
like what's great, what you're highlighting is there's two different ways to get a similar effect, right? So Southwest, I think, went with the get your employees bought into the mission
yeah,
and to be part of the team, and they make pretty good money at Southwest. Not as much as Delta, but they are willing to make a little bit less because they love working there. Whereas the Delta people, Delta's culture, just throw a bunch of money at them, and that works too. You throw enough money at people, they're bought in. They'll 100% buy in. Everybody has a price, man.
this is true.
All right, let's move along because we've still got a bunch of stuff to cover.
Sweet.
So let's talk about Mesa and Republic. This came out of
All
left
right.
field, man. Like I didn't hear any grumblings about this, and then on April 7th they dropped the bombshell that they're announcing a merger. They still won't be the largest regional carrier. SkyWest has about 500 aircraft. The combined merge with these guys will put them just over 300. But I think, that's obviously above anybody else, I believe. Uh, the big thing is they're going to be an all 175 fleet, which
Yep.
they're going to be standardized across the fleet. They have, Mesa got rid of the RJs. So this is where in my opinion, they're going to have the leg up on SkyWest. Um, the clapped out RJs, man, they're weight restricted. There's always issues with them. A 175 fleet is way more reliable. Embraer makes an excellent product. I used to fly the Phenom. I've jump seated on some 175s. Great airplane. They don't have the weight
It's
restrictions.
really fun.
Oh man, good airplane. And this is
Right.
the reason why Alaska, for their regional routes, only uses 75s now. Great airplane,
Yep.
reliable, can carry the weight. Much less maintenance problems to my understanding, especially compared to the older RJs. So it's gonna be a big change in the industry, man. What's your take on it?
I think it's interesting what I've seen online, I guess, from the people that work at these two companies. It was somewhat like in the rumblings for the last couple of years.
Okay.
Mesa has obviously been struggling, and I think for the most part, everyone in the industry kind of sees them as somehow they survive anything, and people, say
The
they could survive a
cockroach of the
nuclear war,
regionals.
and yeah, and they're still going to be flying around their fleet. So I think at the end of the day, Mesa, they really, from what I kind of looked at, their on-time performance and reliability was not always the best, and they're kind of everything in this industry kind of takes 10, 15 years to re-evolve itself, and I don't think they had a place in that next evolution of the airlines in America as things consolidate, get smaller, as the competition changes. I think they were probably going to struggle getting a new contract when that one came up with United. Again, I don't know, but it seems like their on-time metrics compared to Republic or SkyWest. I mean, how big was Mesa? Was it like 200 airplanes?
No, it was way less than that. I looked it up a couple days ago, but it was like a third of what Republic had.
Yeah,
Um,
SkyWest could gobble them up in a minute, dude. They could just increase block hours and be done with it. Maybe not that simple, obviously, but like they just were the cheapest to operate, and that's how they kept getting the contracts, so they could make it work. I know that they were hovering below $1 on their stock market ticker for a while. They came back out of that. But I think Republic, what I don't know, this is
oh,
what's kind of weird about strategic abilities. Like, if I'm Republic Airways, do I buy Mesa to just consolidate, get bigger, and have a better cost fee for departure, whatever the acronym is? Because that's obviously that's how the regionals are paid. It's not paid on selling tickets.
right.
It's every route is negotiated on, and some are included with fuel, some are not. And so hey, we can go negotiate now because there's less competition for United Airlines or Delta or whatever, saying there's one less player out in the market and we can actually drive up the price. I think that's the most interesting part of this is like, how does that change your relationship with these legacies you have these contracts for? And does that amend or change the contracts at all? I
Hmm.
don't know. One other thing really quick. I do know that United did reaffirm a 10-year contract with Mesa through this. So
Yeah.
I don't know how that's corporately structured, but they did reaffirm a whole brand new decade long contract. So I don't know if that will get absorbed into Republic at that point or not.
Well, so I just looked it up. Mesa only has 60 airplanes. Republic has 240.
Yeah, it's
So
nothing.
yeah, so they had a quarter of what Republic had. So
Right.
yeah, so it's just I think Mesa's been stringing it along for longer than they should have, and so they might have seen the writing on the wall and finally said, all right, let's just sell out. Um, and I know
Yeah.
Republic was. It seems like Republic has tried to work its way west for a while and has really struggled with it.
Yeah.
So buying Mesa probably adds to their route network to get them further across the country so they can compete with SkyWest. Going back to what you're saying, it is different than any like major merger, right? Like because
Yeah.
these are all contracts underneath the legacies that they're flying for, so it's a totally different environment. The big thing is they they both fly for United and a couple other tails, if I'm not mistaken. So
I think Republic is with Delta as well. I
okay,
don't know if they operate for American.
okay,
Again,
well
I
probably
was never
not.
based on
They've
the
got
East
Americans
Coast.
got their own stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's a good merger because they both fly for the same carrier or carriers right now. So it's going to be smooth, same fleet type. I read something that on the new board, Mesa will only have one seat,
Yep,
and
I saw
Republic
that.
takes the rest. So really, it's just Republic's buying Mesa, and they're going to get their fleet, and they're going to get their route network and their contracts. That was probably if the United contract gets transferred with the sale, then that was probably a great move on Republic to be able to get a 10-year United contract without having to do the
Sure.
work, and they get to expand their fleet at the same time. So it's a win-win. I don't see a lot of downsides to this deal. It's gonna just increase capacity across the system.
I got two
They
things to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Um, Brian Bedford, the CEO of Republic, was tapped by Trump to be the new FAA administrator. So, how does that work? Of the CEO leaving to go run the FAA if he gets appointed
If he
or
gets appointed.
confirmed?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you are under a merger. That's kind of a weird one, don't you think? Like he's leaving right now, and then this is all happening. That'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think there's risk in that, but I
Well,
don't know.
I guarantee you that this wasn't something that popped up in the past few months. Um,
Right.
they knew about
They've thought
this.
this through.
Yeah, they thought this through. So there's probably some game plan that we're not seeing yet. Um, the merger to happen, Bedford to take a step out so they can bring in somebody new who can run it,
Yeah.
and then Bedford can move into FAA. I doubt it's just none of these deals are ever done spur of the moment, except maybe the JetBlue Spirit one, but didn't work out too well.
That's right. And then the other thing I was going to add was, you mentioned them pushing west. I wonder how it's going to change the competitiveness versus Sky West with them buying Mesa. Like, can they go into those markets? Like, I think they got rid of Phoenix for Mesa. I don't know what Mesa's markets were as much. Do you remember? What are their
Well,
hubs?
Mesa is headquartered in Phoenix, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a well, and
Nice.
I could be wrong, but they have a major base there. That's where they park those 737s that they never use. So whenever we land at Phoenix, I always see the airplanes over there on the same side as I think Honeywell or whoever that big operator is over there. Um,
Okay.
Mesa does have more, at least westerly routes than Republic did or
Sure.
does. So, once in a while you hear a Brickyard call sign out west near Reno or something, which is a little unusual. I really think they've been trying to move west, and this is a big opportunity for them. Also, getting the United contract's a big factor in it. Um,
Right.
So it's pretty cool. It's unexpected, but I'm struggling to see the downsides of the merger. I know the Mesa pilots are probably going to be a lot happier. I know they've really struggled. However, one thing we do have to talk about is the unions. They're run by
Yeah.
both. Yeah. So Republic has been a Teamsters union forever, and Mesa has been ALPA. So this is going to be
Uh-huh.
very interesting to see how that goes down.
How does that even work? Does
I don't know, man.
does the collective pilot group, like, do they have to get to? Does that have to be a first order of business
No,
of
it's
deciding
usually,
who's going to represent them?
oh, well, maybe amongst the pilot group, but usually the combined contracts and stuff are like the last thing that happened in a merger. Um,
Yeah,
so
because a senior, like an SLI, I'm thinking about when you get to that point, if you're going to want to be the one to negotiate a JCVA, you need whoever's going to be doing that to, that whatever union is going to be in charge of that needs to kind of be known.
right.
And so I'm wondering, is an SLI, a seniority list integration, is that required before deciding? Like, how do they? I don't know. How do they vote on that? Is it so?
Well, I think American is highlighting that because Sidebar American, they've been pushing for Alpha lately, and I think there was a
Yeah,
big move this week on that. So it's a membership thing, right? The Teamsters are pretty aggressive. I know that. I know some people have flown under Teamster operators, and I know they're pretty old school union. So they're not going to give
right.
up without a big hard fight. When it's an Alpha carrier merger, it's pretty straightforward. There's rules laid out. There's a whole series. The seniority list gets snapshotted the day the merger is publicly announced, and then there's a series of rules and steps to merge the list. Um,
Yeah,
the
it's a
airline,
complex process.
yeah, it's very complex. The airline getting bought always ends up on the shorter end of the deal. It'll be really educational to watch that all play out, so that at least in our career path, this is the first time I think we've seen this. Going forward, we'll be able to see it happen. If it were to happen again, we would know. But man, most of the carriers are Alpha now. There's very few out there that aren't anymore. You got American, they're trying to go Alpha. You've got Southwest with Swappa. You had Teamsters at Republic, and I think Atlas is Teamsters. I don't know who else is not Alpha.
I don't know. I think that's about it. I don't
Yeah.
think the only major I can think of is uh, Allegiant, and then also
Are they
Swappa is in the
Teamsters?
Southwest, like you said. No, there's Swappa is
No,
at
Allegiant.
Southwest. Yeah, they're Teamsters.
Okay, yeah, so they're another Teamster. So there's a few of them out there. But they're smaller carriers compared in comparison. Um,
Right.
yeah.
I am running a search on Grok to see if it can come up with something, and I'm curious if anyone has the actual answer. Let us know. We'll compare and contrast to see how accurate the AI is at doing it. But my guess is that they would just come, once it's to the last step, like you said, they're going to have a vote. However, the vote goes is a 50-1. Or I'm like, well, if Republic is buying them, maybe it's just a matter of, hey, we're buying you, no longer, um, no longer represented by Alpha. I don't know. I don't know if that would make sense too, or if they're going to give them a choice
Yeah, that
on doing
will,
that or not.
man, that would be it's going to be really interesting to watch because we'll be able to see what they can get away with. These unions don't want to give up without a fight. That's a big thing. So
What's money,
it's
right?
big
It's
money.
real money. It's millions of
Yep.
dollars.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, because
So,
imagine if they can flip Republic to an Alpha carrier, that's another big
couple
fleet.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's another
it's a
big,
lot of pilots.
yeah, a lot of pilots, a lot of dues, lots of money. Your search reveal anything?
Yeah, it says, all right, this is AI. We all know that AI is not always the most reputable, but we'll maybe put in the show notes too on what the final answer if we find more. It says the key points. It seems likely that Teamsters Union will represent the pilots of the merged Mesa and Republic Airlines, given Republic's dominant role in the merger. However, the final decision may involve a vote by all pilots, as union representation in airline mergers can be complex and subject to negotiation. There is some uncertainty with Mesa's pilots currently represented by Alpine discussions ongoing about the prevailing union. So we're not
Super
clear.
informative.
Even
Yeah.
AI is not clear. Yeah. So we'll see,
Yeah.
man.
Okay, let's move on to the next thing, which is Air Wisconsin.
Oh boy.
Yeah, well, pretty interesting to see. They've had a rough go of it the past few years. It is important to know. So, from what I could figure out, there's only 3 carriers that have never filed bankruptcy since their inception. And it's Air Wisconsin, Southwest, and Alaska. So
Yeah.
this is they're not filing bankruptcy right now, but they've lost all their scheduled routes, and they're gonna have to furlough a bunch of guys. It felt like it happened pretty suddenly, but it seems like it's been yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I think the thing is with Air Wisconsin, they're flying the CRJ 200. Have you ever jump seat on one of those?
No, no.
No. No. I did it one time when I was going to go visit a friend down in South Bend, Indiana, and there were seats in the back, but I was fresh into the regional airlines and I wanted to jump seat and see what it was like. I could not fit. It's loud. It's no air conditioning. The packs don't really work. GPU is always deferred. Like there's
Ugh,
just a lot of issues with that plane. They're
ugh.
very old and they have a ton of cycles onto them. Long story short is that plane is not really in demand anymore. We've moved on, like you said, to the E175 fleet being the gold standard for regionals in the United States. It's just way better in terms of fuel efficiency, passenger experience. Every metric is almost better. Parts are easy to come by as well. The
Mm-hmm.
CRJ is now, they don't make them anymore, so the parts are harder to get. All of those
Mm-hmm.
things contribute to it being a dying fleet. The fact that Air Wisconsin never decided to say, hey, we're going to go after the E170 or even a CRJ 700 or 900 at the
Right.
time being, that was a major flaw because it restricted them to these really small routes,
Yep.
just really regional routes of, Milwaukee to Chicago, some super small route like that. I think their longest route is from like Chicago now to somewhere in Arkansas, something like that. So maybe like 400 miles,
That's
not far at
crazy.
all. So they never really updated it with the times. Like we kind of said, we're going through this next contraction of evolution of our industry. And there's going to be winners and losers. The people that did not change who they were and they're going to lose, and it's going to force them either to merge or file bankruptcy and leave. So right now, what's really interesting about Air Wisconsin is they've tried to have multiple EIS routes,
Yeah.
Central Air Service routes. They have failed to get any of those routes from the government. And if anyone doesn't know what an essential air route is, the more like long story short, they're basically contracted routes the government gives to air carriers to some really small remote, maybe not really small remote, but like, I don't know, Bemidji, Minnesota to
Mm-hmm.
Minneapolis.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Delta's not going to go and serve that route with SkyWest flying there once a day or whatever because they're not going to make money. It costs
Right.
thousands of dollars to operate that flight. There's not enough money in that. So the government goes and basically offsets the cost and say, hey, we will pay you and guarantee you will make money on that route. Well, Air Wisconsin tried to go and do that themselves and bid on all those routes. They never secured one. So they are kind of lost at sea right now. They lost their American Airlines contract that was up on the 4th, I believe. So they have now laid off 180 pilots, and they have about 150 or so left. God knows how long they could sustain making payroll on 150 employees plus everyone else for much longer. I don't know. Should we read what the CEO said to its employees? Do you think that's important or no?
It's publicly known. We don't need to read a big diatribe.
Yeah,
What
we'll
the
put it in the
take?
show notes.
Yeah, we could do that. We can link it. One of the big takeaways, so this is just my opinion. In that message, he went highlighting how we were gonna create our own routes and do this whole big thing, and it's like, wait a minute. So why weren't you implementing that along the way? It feels like a cop
Yeah,
out. It feels like, oh, this is the thing we were waiting for to be able to pretend like we were trying to do something, but they really weren't. I mean, they don't seem to have made any positive, or what's the word I'm looking for? Any like real change towards a new strategy over the past couple years. I haven't seen any move or heard about it. It's been status quo of flying and losing regional contracts. So,
yeah,
you're going to transition to flying a CRJ 200 under charter operations. Nobody wants to get on that thing. Like, even for the purposes of chartering sports teams, there's no way a sports team's getting on a CRJ 200 that's clapped out. Like that's no insurance company will sign off on it. No university will sign off on it. Who's the one?
Yeah.
There's a charter operator out of Milwaukee that flies Saab 2000 turboprops that fly sports teams around.
Okay.
They're going to get on that before they
Nice.
get on a clapped out 200. Like, yeah, why would they get on the RJ? I mean, it doesn't have the legs, it doesn't have the comfort, it doesn't have the cabin, it doesn't have any, it can't carry the weight. You know, the Saab can carry the weight. I mean, and they lost their they lost their EAS contracts, at least some of them, to Contour, which is a 135
Yeah.
operator, a charter operator, right? They fly
Yeah.
145s. So, and 135s. So it seems to be highlighting something important, you know, that is a theme today, right? Part of the theme today. So Mesa got rid of all their 200s. Republic got rid of all their RJs, and Contour doesn't have RJs. You know, everybody wants a non-RJ fleet now because the RJs bring so many problems. Somehow SkyWest has made it work, but I think that's because they have so many in their fleet that if something breaks, they can bring in another one. They have the size to offset the problems of it. But there's no way this is not costing even SkyWest money to operate these
Yeah.
airplanes. It
Well, what do you think? They owned them outright. They're all paid off money
Oh,
now.
absolutely. It's still
So
super
really
expensive.
wonder.
So
Yeah.
I flew for an operator up in Alaska that had, you know, you've seen them on all the TV shows, Life Below Zero and all that. They flew DC-6s until last year. I mean, yeah, they own them all outright. Yeah, yeah.
They still are
Oh, not
until last
anymore.
year, you
They
said?
finally, yeah, I think
Yeah.
they finally did the last flight in the DC-6 last year because I think they're switching to ATRs or something.
Okay.
Because they owned them outright and they had tons of them in the boneyard and tons of parts, and they had all the teams that had known how to work on them, you know, and I guess it finally just got financially to a point where they're like, all right, now it makes more sense to transition to something newer. But I mean, if you own it outright, there is a positive side to that, but at some point you have to take a look at it and go, okay, yeah, we own it outright, but in the long run it's going to make more sense to get a newer airplane.
Yeah.
You know, especially with how the 200 is. I can't believe they have an all 200 fleet. That's crazy. It's so limited.
It's just like we keep coming back to, companies need to update their stuff to modern times
Yep.
because after COVID, yeah, COVID happened for like a year and a half, right, where things were pretty severely on the downturn. But the thing is, like, no company evolved. Or I'm not going to say no company. There's multiple companies in our industry that never decided to evolve, and they're acting like it's 2015 still.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be something that's really going to bite people in the back of the butt uh, if we start seeing things start to slide anymore, because they weren't on level footing right now. So I don't know. I think one thing I want to add here is, so when it comes to keeping your Part 121 operating certificate, you
Mm.
need to basically fulfill and maintain a ton of different regulatory items in order to say that you're a 121 airline or an airline passenger service. So for some reason, Air Wisconsin has to do one biweekly flight from all places, Appleton, Wisconsin to Milwaukee, Wisconsin as well. They must do it because it's the cheapest one to operate and they have staffing there and all that. But man, I think it'd be kind of fun to just go on a flight
Yeah.
and like talk to the guys and be like, so who's flying the airplane? Like probably the number one or number two guys on the seniority list or whatever like that, just riding it out. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of interesting, but I don't know how long they can go. I saw an Instagram reel. They have all their planes put in storage in Milwaukee right now
Oh,
on the
okay.
tarmac or on the ramp.
Hmm.
So I don't know how many airplanes are flying or what they're. I don't know how much longer do you think they really have? Like in your gut feeling, I guess,
Not
if they don't
long.
come up with anything,
Not long.
like a
Yeah.
month or two.
You know, the problem is I don't know what their cash reserves are, if any. So
Yeah,
that would probably be the factor, right? Do they think they have a viable option going forward? If they do and they have the cash, then keeping this one route open to maintain their certificate would make sense, right? Okay, we've got a plan. It's going to take a little while to get it into place. We think we can come out of this. Okay.
yeah.
Uh, But realistically, man, I wonder if anybody's ever come back from something like
Well, who tried to do it was ExpressJet,
yeah,
turned
a
AKA
couple times.
AHA Airlines in Reno, right? Don't you
Yep.
remember that?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, I do.
Was it coming after COVID, like 2021? They try to go start this kind of thing, exactly what Air Wisconsin is up in Reno, Nevada. That
Yeah.
lasted about, what, a year or so?
Yeah.
So, man, Scott, I don't think anyone's come back from this when you have,
No.
it's just such a costly business and it takes so much cash to operate these airplanes and the staffing and the ALPA and all these things. It's just a lot. So I wish them well. Um, but yeah, I don't know how much longer it's going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's move on to our last topic, which is it's the big talk amongst everybody right now, which is the economic market with what's been going on with the volatility and the tariffs. Are we heading for a recession? Are we not? Were we in one? Were we not? But as you alluded to earlier, Frontier and Delta have revised their earnings essentially for the year. I think we're going to see more carriers do the same. It's very interesting. Normally going into the summer is when all the airlines are making their money. So, what are you taking away from this?
I think the tariffs and all that will figure themselves out. And I don't, again, this isn't a political show, but I think the real issue, at least on the bottom end for Frontier and Spirit and the low cost airlines, is consumer sentiment. And Frontier pointed this out. I'm just going to read really quickly on
Okay.
kind of what they put because I do think it's important. Because at the end of the day, perception is reality, right? So if people think the sky is falling, or let's say, they think that America is going to be broke, they're going to start acting like America's broke, even though they're not. So Frontier came out in their 8K, and let me find exactly where it was said. Okay. They said, quote, the weakened demand environment is evidenced by the 17-point decline in the Conference Board Consumer Confidence Index from 109.5 at year-end 2024 to 92.9. I don't know much about that index and how big of a swing that is, but I do know that if Frontier is mentioning that in their 8K, which is basically material change in their financial predictions of their company and their earnings report, it means something. And I think on the lower end of things, it's the price sensitive person that's going to have a real issue buying those tickets, the low fare, airlines in that sense. But then also, if you listen to Delta's earnings report, they said the premium long haul Delta One seats, whatever the premium seats, they're selling well. They have no issue filling those seats at the yields they're looking for. It's the basic economy tickets that they're having the issues with. So we're seeing this major effect on the lower end, basically middle class American. And we were talking about this before we started.
Yep.
The most interesting thing about this was, let's say before COVID, Delta would have had issues filling the Delta One seat, the really premium high end seat.
Yep.
But after COVID, all the money got transferred, the wealth transfer from the basic American got transferred to the wealthy. The rich got richer and the poorer got poorer. And I think this is evident of how that's playing out right now, is saying that we have no issue having rich people fill the seats, even though the economy is kind of sketchy right now. But the person can't buy a $19 ticket, but they can buy $10,000 seat on Delta One. It's kind of crazy if you think about it.
Yeah.
The fact that they don't have a problem selling those seats, but the lower end seats that are cheaper, those are the issues.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that's ever been happening in airlines, like in the history of airlines. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know.
the $19 seat hasn't been around as long as I would think, right? I mean, that's
true.
Yeah, it's a relatively new thing. It just doesn't make sense to me. I've been following what's been going on with the tariffs and the administration and pretty closely, and to me, it's a negotiating tactic. It's not a long-term plan. They're trying to fix the problems we have here. That's the way, at least I'm looking through it. I'm sure half the people will completely disagree with me. Totally, go for it. That's okay. So I wonder if it's a knee-jerk panic reaction because the industry in general, not just airline industry, but everybody's going, what the heck is going on here? We've never seen anybody do anything like this. And so they don't know how to respond to it. It really is shaking up not just our markets, but the world markets.
Yeah.
Our markets are already rebounding after they backed off the tariffs. So it's just really volatile right now. My question, we talked about it earlier, is, well, I wonder if the ticket sales are down for the next few quarters. Because out there flying the line right now, it's still busy. We're in April, and man, I just got off a trip, and I think almost every leg was oversold. Um,
Yeah.
we talked about this before the show. There could be a couple factors, delayed flights previously that got pushed onto ours. Could be something like that. There's been some weather issues back east the past couple weeks. But I don't know, man. I'm not. I know there's a lot of talk about canary in the coal mine right now. Are these signs of a downturn? On the last episode, we did talk about how every 5 to 7 years there is a downturn in the industry, and we're on 5 years since COVID, since the furloughs of COVID and everything. So we're coming up to the next cycle of something to create a problem. This could be it. If it is, I hope it's short-lived and soft. I think Air Wisconsin's an isolated incident with their furloughs. I don't see it being a bigger economy issue that created that problem. I think that seems to be more of a managerial issue with them not trying to look forward. They knew that contract with American was coming up, and they didn't have anything else
Yeah.
lined up. It's crazy to me. And I know that, I looked into them a little bit more, and it's like that was kind of their MO. They waited till the last minute to get something new. And it's like, well,
They always have been able to pull it off, though. That's the thing. They
yeah,
always just find a new, airline. So
it always works
good
until
for
it
them.
doesn't, right?
Yeah, right.
But I'm struggling to see this as a bigger sign of like a recession or something coming. I know there's a lot of panic amongst the general population, especially with these tariffs because of the uncertainty. So I know everybody's knee jerk is to tighten up,
Yeah.
and just tighten their belt, till they know what's going to happen, because they've been through so much since COVID. The average person that makes, let's say, under 100 grand a year has really struggled. So
Yeah,
that
totally.
could explain why the airlines are like, well, those people are tightening up. We better be careful here. I could see that. I could totally see that. We're pilots, so we want to know what's going to happen to us, right? How that's going to impact us. That's
Right.
all we care about. It's all about us.
It's true.
Job security. And I mean, I don't see big furloughs coming from this. Now, I could look back in a few months at this episode and go, man, I was wrong. I hope I'm not, and I'm open to letting the situation develop. But at the present moment, April 11th, 2025, I don't see this as a warning sign of something bigger yet. I think we're
Yeah.
still too early in the process. It's just interesting because the social media and the media cycles have become so aggressive, especially now that Trump's back in, and the mainstream media, or what's left of it, really hates him. So they're exciting people a lot more than they probably should be.
Perception is reality, my friend. And that's my
Yeah,
point,
yeah,
is if people push it, because again, it's Frontier isn't citing tariffs directly impacting them. It's the consumer confidence, which is based upon what the media is telling them to believe.
there you go.
And I'm not trying to make this huge issue on, shaking my hand to the fist saying, these people are lying to you, but they are in the
So they are.
business of telling you and informing you on their version of
Yep.
things. And again, this isn't to do with who's right and wrong. I am just remembering back when COVID hit, people told me I was not going to work for an airline for over a decade.
Yeah.
People said it's going to take legitimately an entire decade for the airlines to hire new pilots. There were reports of that from like ICAO or IATA saying that. And so my point is, I have tuned these things out because these are the same people who told me these things. And what's going to happen is going to happen. And I can make my plan on if something happens, but I am not going to sit there every single day and understand what Jim Cramer is saying about the stock market. I'm just not doing it, bro.
So,
I'm not gonna
you should pay attention. You absolutely should pay attention and do the exact opposite, because that's how you make money in the stock market.
Just buy what Nancy Pelosi's buying, bro.
Dude,
There's an app for that now.
Shout out to the
Anyways.
Pelosi stock tracker,
Yeah.
which I believe is also called Autopilot.
Yeah, there you go. That'll be our new sponsor, right?
Yeah. Man, like we're not financial advisors, but here's our pilot financial advice. During COVID, it was a week or two before I got furloughed is when the market crashed. Um, and I had some cash on hand at that point, and we're sitting there. I was living in Puerto Rico, flying for a scheduled operator down there, and we're sitting there in the condo, me and one of my coworkers, and we're watching. I think it was MSNBC, one of the stock things. This is going down. I'm looking at my phone. I'm going, man, this is the time to buy. Like everything had crashed. These prior to the crash, all these companies I'd been looking at were skyrocketing, and I'm like, this is the time to buy these companies. And this
Right.
guy's like, no, 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 you're wrong. I used to work in the stock market in New York. You're wrong. Don't do that. That's super dangerous. And he talked me out of it. I put a little money in, but I wanted to dump everything I had in. And guess what? Had I done what my knee jerk told me to do, I'd have a
Insane
lot
gains.
more money right now.
Yeah.
To put a little positive spin on it, I've been looking at the last week going, I think this is temporary. I've flown with a couple guys recently who are pretty well off from their investments in the market. They all agreed with me. Um, I've been putting a lot of money into the things I trust and I want this week because when this turns around, if you look at the history of the stock market, always goes up, always comes back up. Um, buying the dip now, if it pays off, it's going to be a substantial payoff. Um,
Yeah.
so that's what I'm doing. I'm just saying that and I'm saying that to highlight a positive point, which is I think this is temporary. I don't think this is a bigger deal than it's being made out to be. Um, yes, it hurts in the very short term, but it's going to come back. And when it comes back, it's going to come back stronger. And if you stuck it out or bought in now, I think you'll see some payoffs. But that's just me, and I'm not a financial advisor, so don't take my advice.
Totally. I think we're going to have really good clarity within the industry by end of July, if not earlier, maybe in June. Once they start, I think second quarter's earning report will have really good guidance on seeing what's happening. Yeah, I know that Trump put a 90-day suspension on most of the tariffs and to negotiate, but really in this industry, we're about a quarter to 1 to 3 quarters ahead of making those schedules and really kind of fine tuning. Because again, if you look at American or United, they can't make these super short term adjustments to their schedule. Once they publish their schedules, they can tweak it a little bit and cancel some flights and take some capacity out. But that's not like you can do it 3 weeks in advance. You're going to fly the schedule. The bill's already paid.
Right.
The gas is already paid for. Whatever. All those things. It's really going to depend on how I think September or really after Labor Day to November. If we start seeing some serious issues with tickets not being bought and the yields not being good, I think we're going to start to see some consolidation or some maybe issues thinking that it might be deeper pain ahead of longer term. It's impossible to know what we're going to see. And one point I would like to make is, for the most part, the consumer was doing fine. They were making their bills. They were not defaulting on credit cards. Yeah, it was going up a little bit. But for the most part, people were doing not great, obviously, like we talked about, but they weren't losing their house like the '08 recession. They aren't
Right.
going and completely getting eviscerated.
Right.
So the underlying economy, it seems like just personally is not horrible.
Right.
So the foundation of that is not the issue. It's these self-induced things. And so Trump being Trump, who knows what's going to happen there? But I would like to be positive and say that, well, I don't see this damage being irreversible, at least. But again, I'm speaking out of my butt, kind of. It's not, that's my opinion. That's not my professional opinion, I guess. That's my own personal opinion. Delta did pull growth. They are going to be flat, and they want to reduce their staffing by attrition. They're not planning any furloughs as of now.
Okay.
But they also did cancel their future guidance for the year-long guidance. They said it's too unstable right now. We're not going to publish that data,
Right.
which honestly it's pretty valid. How are you
Sure.
supposed to look for year-long guidance? It's impossible. So just like how Delta doesn't know, same with Frontier pulling back. That covers both the high end market and the low end market, and it confirms both things that the low end ticket sales are going to be the issue. Um, and that kind of leads me to my next thing I want to say, and I'll be done. I'll get on my soapbox. I think you're going to see a Spirit and Frontier merger announced in the next 3 months.
Oh,
That's
wow, that's soon. Huh? I
yeah,
thought by end of year. You think
no
no? Nice.
three.
Yeah.
I would say all right. If I want to be,
So you're saying buy
if I want,
ULCC right now?
I don't know. That's again.
Since
I
we're giving
think
stock advice, right?
yeah, right. I think by the end of summer, but I think in the next 3 months, I think all these moves being made, I think they're going to have to come to the table or something else is going to happen with Spirit. But I just think that on the low end, if this is consistent and it does not get better, I don't see where those two companies go without each other.
I
I don't
completely
get it.
agree.
They both need each other.
Yep.
Like I said, the market's evolved
Yep.
and there's not space for two of those companies anymore.
You're absolutely right. And I mean, if they combined, they would be huge. You know, we. What makes me believe what you're saying? I thought it would come by the end of the year. Frontier just announced. They put out an announcement this week about they're putting in the first class seating that essentially matches Spirit's. So they're essentially standardizing their fleet to match Spirit's fleet. So it
Yeah.
totally makes sense. I mean, because then all you have to do when they merge is repaint the airplanes and swap out the color of the seats, and then everything else is identical across the fleet.
I will make one caveat though. If they do choose a new CEO at Spirit, then I am a lot less likely to think that they're going to merge. But
Interesting.
if that CEO position does not get filled, that's for a reason. And
Interesting.
so I really think
Yeah.
if we start seeing, if there is an announcement for the CEO in let's say a month or two,
Uh-huh.
then my opinion is wrong. But if that seat goes unfilled and they're rudderless, they're just doing that for a reason, in my opinion. Again, this is just, we're talking like we're pilots right on the
Sure.
line.
Sure.
And I don't want people to think like I'm not trying to predict or whatever, but this is fun for me. And I
Yeah.
personally have been following this very closely. And I just don't see how they continue on especially that they ousted kind of the two executive levels. So
Yeah.
watch for the CEO position. If that gets filled, then we'll see. But that thing starts going unfilled for the next month or two. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
That's my opinion.
it is interesting they didn't have anybody lined up to replace or even an inkling of who would replace Ted Christie. So yeah, you might have some good validity to your supposition there.
We'll
Well,
see though.
you heard it here first. John Kramer has predicted the merger.
Clip it, baby, clip it. Maybe we'll
Well,
go viral, and that's how we get our big break.
there you
Is
go.
2 months
Yeah,
from now.
yeah. Woo! I'll get you out of your
Yeah,
bathroom and into a better recording studio.
yeah. That's my towel curtain right there. So it's real
Oh,
high end production, right?
yeah, the acoustics are fantastic.
Making the big bucks.
All right. Well, that we covered quite a lot, so that's a great wrap up to episode 2. We have a few guests in the making. They
Yeah.
had some stuff going on this week. They said got a couple people that we'll have in the next 2 episodes. And then we've been talking to some other people that want to get on now. Going forward, we're going to have at least 1 or 2 guests a week, I think, which is going to be really fun. We've kind of started working through the technical bugs. Definitely a lot better on the internet connection now this week. Yeah, if anybody has any ideas for an episode that wants to be on the podcast, any comments, autopiloton.com, autopilotonpodcast@gmail.com. That's all one word. We have an X account. We have an Instagram account. We are posting this on Spotify and YouTube. It's a little harder to find on YouTube because unfortunately I found out all the autopilot on searches go directly to Tesla's autopilot. So I was not predicting that. But I am I'll link it in the show notes. That way you can go straight to our page there to bypass the search problems. Spotify, it's great. We're easy to find on there. Trying to get on Apple. Apparently they were having some system issues with logins this week. So hopefully
Okay.
I'll be able to get us on Apple Podcasts here soon. Going forward, we'll have the episodes uploaded a lot faster too.
Cool.
What else you got to add, John?
Actually, really excited. I think once we got this audio technical kind of stuff figured out, we're going to be consistent every week, hopefully, and we're going to bring the news. We're going to bring different topics. This week was very heavy in news.
Yeah.
Just there's a lot of things that happened,
Yeah.
but we want to cover a lot of different topics that affect us pilots, and we want it to be like again, like we're just having a conversation at cruise. So hopefully we can be some good entertainment on your way to your commute or drive to the airport or whatever it is. We hope to see you again soon and talk to you next week.
Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
See ya.